How are you? Good? Good. Good to see you. Hey. You want to sit with us? You have to sit
Anybody need a program?
Okay, it's 7 o'clock, so we're starting. I want to welcome you all to the League of Women Voters Candidates Forum. I'm Dan Robbins, the voter services person for the League of Women Voters. We have, you have the programs, and so you know what the rules are, which are that each candidate will have 2 minutes, an opening statement, and our trusty timekeeper is Harriet McCurdy here, and she will hold up a sign that says 30 seconds when they're up and a half, and then after a minute and a half, the stop sign that you see there, and then after that, I've got a big hook back here, if necessary. On your way in, you could pick up 3x5 cards to write questions on for the candidates. If you didn't get one and you have a question, you can simply hold up your hand, and Willa Reister and Carol Casillo, who will come and get it. And then after you write your question, just hold it up, and they will come and collect the questions, and they'll bring them down to Helen and Pete Peterson, who will then collect them and order them and give them to our moderator. Our Zoom operator is Larry DePoy, and for those of you on Zoom, if you have questions, just go in the chat box and write your question, and Bear will include those in the questions. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce Bear Stevenson, who will be our moderator for the evening.
Thank you, Dan Robbins. It's good to see this good crowd out that's concerned. I suppose most of y'all are concerned citizens. You're here to support a candidate, and you're here because you just want to know more about their position. But before we get started, I'd just like to say a few things. Number one, our form that we had for the primary back in August. Those of you who were here heard me say this. I'm not for any one of you candidates, and I'll tell you why. I'm on the election commission here in Anderson County, and I'm going to give you a little civics lesson right quick. In all 95 counties, there's an election commission, and there are 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats in every county. I am one of the 2 Democrats that serve on the Anderson County Election Commission. The Election Commission is made up by depending on the makeup of the legislature, the General Assembly in Nashville, and right now, the General Assembly is predominantly Republican, so therefore, each of the election commissions have 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats. There's 5 members on every election commission in all 95 counties. And one of the things that we as election commission members are we cannot support any candidate. We're totally neutral in the make sure elections are fair and free. Members that are on our election commission, you can darn well rest assured, concerned, and we're very committed to making sure that happens. So all you candidates, don't worry about it. There's going to be fair elections here in Anderson County. And I want to, before we get started, just to say thank you for all you candidates, for you making the commitment and sacrificing your time to serve the people that's going to be in whatever district you're running for. I can vouch for you candidates. I've been there, done that. 28 years ago, I ran for the state senate. Miss Annabelle Clement O'Brien and Senator Joe Haynes from Nashville, both of them were from Nashville, but they encouraged me and talked me into running for the state senate against Randy McNally. Now, how smart was that? But anyway, I'm still trying to figure out how we got 47% of the vote that year in 1994. But anyway, it was a learning experience for me, and they gave me a greater appreciation for the political process and what it means to serve and to put your name on the ballot. And like I say, I want to say congratulations before we start to all you candidates for making the commitment to serve others, because that's what you will be doing. If you're elected, you'll be serving others. Now, we have some questions, and I want all you candidates, right here is the microphone for the Zoom, and all of you are out there watching at home on your computers. Right here is the microphone, and also the camera is right here. So you just need to stand roughly in this area right here, and Larry will make sure that you get picked up. And at this time, I want to go ahead and call the candidates for the U.S. House of Representatives. We're going to start with the House of Representatives, and then we'll go to the State Senate, and then we'll go to the Tennessee House of Representatives for the 33rd District, and then candidates for the Tennessee House of Representatives from the 32nd District, which is parts of Roane and Loudoun counties. But at this time, Chuck Fleischman, Republican, Meg Gorman, Democrat, Thomas Roomba, Independent, and Rick Tyler, Independent. Would you four just come on down here in the front and take a seat? Those of you, Chuck Fleischman, Meg Gorman, Thomas Roomba, and Rick Tyler. The Republican, the Democrat, and 2 Independents. Are any of you here? Is there a representative who is going to make an opening statement on your behalf? You'll have 2 minutes. In the event a candidate cannot attend, a substitute will be allowed to present a 2-minute prepared statement on the candidate's behalf. Substitutes will not be allowed to participate in the question and answer periods or closing statements. Any of those 4 here, or is there any of those 4 have a candidate or a substitute that would like to make a 2-minute talk? Hey, Norm. If not, then is there anybody here from the State Senate? Randy McNally. I don't think Lieutenant Governor McNally is here. Anybody want to make a statement on his behalf? Well, next we have the candidates. I know these 2 are here. I've seen both of them.
And at this time, I'm going to call down here the two candidates for the House of Representatives from the 33rd District, most of Anderson County. I think there's about 6 precincts that's in another district. But John Reagan and Jim Dodson. John Reagan, the Republican, and Jim Dodson, the Democrat. If you two would come on down and take a seat. Have any of you ever wondered why there's a curtain on the voting booth? You ever thought about that? You know why there's a curtain on the voting booth? Nobody knows what you do when you're in there. Totally secret and totally private as to what you do when you're in that voting booth. But we got to make sure that we all vote. Okay, now you're going to have, each one of you going to make an opening statement. And you can just come up here. Then you can slide back a little bit to give them room to come up here. And stand somewhere, like I say, right in this area. You can make an opening statement. And then you can, after you make your opening statement, then I've got some questions for you. But I want you to tell you, I want everybody to realize, I'm just a messenger. I don't write these questions. All I'm going to do is just read them. But at this time, the John Reagan, the Republican, you are going to be making a 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you, Darren.
You have to hold the microphone almost touching your lips.
Okay, we'll try that again. Thank you, Bear. This is interesting opportunity here. First off, let me say thank you to the League of Women Voters, and thank you to all of you who are here to hear us, the candidates, present our visions for our state. When you look back at past events, the old saying is, your vision is 2020.
Perfect. For example, let's take a look back at the last 2 years. Gasoline prices have hit record highs.
Along with our national debt, crime statistics, another record is the number of illegal migrants and cartel members and deadly drugs flooding our nation. Inflation rates have surged to 40-year highs. Female athletes have had their scholarships, their trophies, their dignity stolen by males competing in their sport. And you don't need glasses to see that our national leaders are following the wrong vision. Therefore, what is the right vision for Tennessee? Our founders' vision was that political liberty and economic freedom bring prosperity to all. One without the other guarantees that both will fail. But together, they are invincible. On a per capita basis, Tennessee ranks as the lowest debt state in our nation, as well as the second lowest taxed state in the nation. Moreover, we rank in the top 10 for roads, business climate, and most importantly, for individual freedom. To maintain and improve these standards, we must educate our citizens to continue our founders' vision. To that end, the General Assembly passed the first major funding reform for our schools in over 30 years, a student-based system that ensures money is directed towards student needs and achievement. In summary, I stand before you with a proven track record of success helping Tennessee solve problems and achieve a better future for our citizens. Thank you.
And at this time, for a 2-minute opening statement, we have Jim Dodson, who is running as a Democrat for the 33rd House District.
Thank you, Barrett. First of all, I'd like to thank Barrett for moderating tonight, and I'd particularly like to thank the League of Women Voters for always giving us this opportunity to have a forum where we can talk about the issues that are important to us locally. I do appreciate some of the statewide issues and the national issues, but I'm here to support our local decision-making process, and I think that's something that we really need to do. Again, I'm Jim Dodson. I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher here in the city of Oak Ridge this is my 36th year. I came from a class today. wonderful opportunities to talk to and expose our young minds to really great things. So I've done that. My experience is also on the Oak Ridge City Council. I've been a two-term city council member. I was elected first in 2016. I'm council's representative on the Planning Commission. We have seen so much growth, particularly in Oak Ridge currently, and we're looking for a lot of growth as well in Anderson County. So I'm really optimistic about local things. I would really like to encourage you all to continue to share your ideas. And a foundation of what I'm running on is more local control rather than from the state of Tennessee. I think you have the best ideas as far as what your schools are supposed to be doing. I support our local school boards. I support our local county commissioners. I support our local city council members. I think that's very, very important. And I've always supported listening to my constituents. My way of, my 30-second thing really messes with you. So my way of governing has always been this. It has been listening to the constituents. It's been doing my research with the city of Oak Ridge. And it's been voting my conscience with regard to both of those things. And I'll continue to do that. After the election, if I'm elected, I'll be having town hall meetings, and I'll be trying to have everybody involved in that, because we need to take our voice to Nashville. Thank you.
Thank both of you for your opening statements. Larry, I'm just out of curiosity. Do you think if we move this table forward a little bit, and they could just sit and wouldn't have to get up, and you think it will? But both of y'all just, but now both of you, you're picking them up, and it makes more sense than them having to get up and come up there. If we could get them on camera, and them just sit here and not have to back and forth, and then I could just ask the question. Okay. This is sort of like an auction. As an auctioneer, I wish I had something that I could auction all of you, because we had for the down at Pollard Auditorium about 2 weeks ago, I auctioned off a bunch of cakes and pies that had been donated by candidates. We had a candidates forum, and all the candidates had 3 minutes to give a talk about themselves, whatever they want to talk about. And then after it was over, I auctioned off a bunch of pies and cakes for the Children's Advocacy Center. And we had a big time. Most expensive pie, I think, brought $500. It was cookies? Okay, it's cookies. But anyway, both these candidates were there. They remember it, but it's but anyway, I just want to say, the thing about an auction, you just have to lots of times wing it. So we're winging it right here for this as well. Now, first question to both of y'all. Do you support modular small reactors coming to Oak Ridge?
We'll take you, Jim Dodson, you'll be first. The next question, but this question, Mr. Reagan, you answer.
Yes, the answer to that is straightforward. I have been working for years, as a matter of fact, to get the small modular reactors brought here. Not just the typical one, which is a light water reactor, but also an alternative one, which is a molten salt reactor. As a matter of fact, we had a groundbreaking ceremony out at the industrial park earlier, I think it was last week, or later last week, for that molten salt reactor. The small modular reactor, which is going to be a design that TVA has volunteered to put into what was known as the Old Quench River site, is in fact one of the true game changers for both environmental protection and electric grid resiliency. I have been chairing the National Conference of State Legislatures Nuclear Working Group, and that has been one of the projects that I have been working with that group across the nation on. Additionally, I represent Tennessee on the Southern States Energy Board, and have been working with that group, particularly on the idea of grid resiliency and putting things like these molten salt reactors spread around where they can protect our grid if part of it goes down. Right now we only have 3 grids, East, West, and Texas. And quite frankly, the big gigawatt plants like we have at Watts Bar or the hydroelectric dams that we produce power with can still be producing power, but if that grid goes down, it does no good. So having those small modular reactors in various places around the grid, if part of it goes down, they can keep part of it up. Thank you.
That's a very easy answer for me as well. I actually am supporting clean energy and small modular reactors. I have a lot of friends who are physicists and they work on some of these things. Rather than coal-fired plants and those type of plants, we need to be phasing that out eventually, and we need to go with things like small modular reactors, molten salt reactors, and I was fortunate to be there as well with John when TRISO X came in, and we were really fortunate to have them come in and break ground over at the Rising Center. Basically what they're going to be doing is they're going to work with uranium pellets, and that will fuel some of these things. But I was able to talk with one of the, I guess, the builders of this and the engineer, and he actually talked to me about small modular reactors and the fact that you can put those in place a lot quicker than you can a larger reactor. They're a lot more energy efficient, and I do support small modular reactors. In fact, the city of Oak Ridge has approved those through city council. So, thank you.
Okay, now. I was telling you, I don't write the questions, I just read them. And Mr. Dodson, you will start first with this question. How do you suggest we help our state come together and overcome our divisiveness? How do you suggest we help our state come together to overcome our divisiveness?
I have to stand up on this. Okay. So this is how I feel about a two-party system. We have some Democrats and we have Republicans in the audience. But we have more than that, we have people. And people are important, and ideas are important, and issues are important. And I feel if we can only come together on some of these divisive issues, I think we'd be a stronger nation, a stronger state, and a much stronger Anderson County. So that's how I feel about that question. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, first off, let me say that a certain amount of divisiveness is not a bad thing. It's only bad when it becomes paralyzing. I would remind you of some times in history. We had, for example, Alexander Hamilton, who was shot and killed in a duel by another politician. And we had a president from the state of Tennessee who was reportedly involved in 22 duels. So the divisiveness has been there in politics for a very long time. The fact that we're not dueling now is a good thing. Some of that divisiveness is gone. It reached an unfortunate crescendo in the 1860 time frame with the Civil War. We have come together since then on many, many things, and that's good. We should continue to do that. But one of the ways that we avoid becoming overly divisive is by first and foremost recognizing that we have a system that is set up to settle disputes. We put our best case forward and we vote. And accepting the vote is in fact how we solve that divisiveness. When you're there and you are on the floor and your bill is going out, you succeeded, you're high-fiving everybody, but when you have your bill voted down, you still have to accept the results. And that is what we do to solve the divisive issues. The rhetoric is still going to be around, come what may.
Okay, for our next question, Mr. Reagan, you will answer this one first. How do you feel about expanding Medicaid in Tennessee? How do you feel about expanding Medicaid in Tennessee?
Well, let me say first off, I feel with my fingers, but I think about expanding Medicaid in Tennessee. And frankly, I think it's not a good idea for our state. I'm of the opinion that what we need to do is expand our jobs, get people who would qualify for these good-paying jobs along with the health care, health insurance that comes with those jobs, rather than giving them handouts, if you will, to solve that problem. I think in part, we have a good system that's in place right now. It has its faults, of course, all of them do, but it works. Expanding it, I don't think is the right answer. There are 11 other states that agree with Tennessee, and I think that we should stay the course on this one. And when something better comes along, I'll see about supporting it. Thank you.
Okay, so this is one of those things where I have to speak from experience. I came today from class, I'm looking out in the class, I'm seeing all these faces, and I see these individuals that can't afford, through their family, through no fault of their own, the means to support adequate health insurance. And it's hard for me to think that if provided by the federal government, we can accept that. It's not a handout. It's something that some people definitely need in our communities. And when you see those people and what it does to them and it does to their families, and they can't afford that, they have to decide, okay, what am I going to pay for? Am I going to pay for rent? Am I going to pay for doctor's expenses? Am I going to pay for food? What am I going to do? These are the same students that I see having to get a quick lunch every morning. It's really important that if we have the means necessary and we are provided that means, then we should accept that. Not because we think we need it, but we know others need it. Thank you.
Mr. Dodson, you go first for this question. What does common sense gun safety, gun control look like to you? What does common sense, gun safety, gun control look like to you?
Well, first of all, I was born in East Tennessee, and I have several family members who own guns, who hunt with guns, and things like that, and, have guns for personal protection. I am not against the guns. What I am not for is the easy access to firearms by a lot of people. I mean, you have to go get a license to drive a car. You should get a license to own a gun. You should take training to learn how to use the gun, and there should be adequate background checks. Me as a school teacher, I'm going to refer to me as a school teacher quite a bit. I'm running as Jim Dodson, the educator. But when I see violence in our schools, and I see that it could have been avoided if we had properly vetted that and had a proactive response rather than a reactive response, I think we need to do something about that. So again, I'm not opposed to owning guns, but if you have one, you need to be able to know how to use it. You need to be properly checked as far as your background, and you need to store that safely at your house. Thank you.
Thank you. I would point out to everyone that today, if you decide to purchase a firearm, you must have a background check done by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So that happens already. I would also point out that the right to own a firearm, to keep and bear arms, is in the Second Amendment. Driving is not a right, it's a privilege. You get a license to exercise a privilege, not a right. There is no license for freedom of religion or freedom of speech, nor should there be one for the right to keep and bear arms. I personally have a firearm that was given to me by my father at the age of 13. I have 6 others to go with it. The idea that adults, or for that matter, responsible young people, cannot handle a firearm is a myth. Now, we do have a problem. I'm going to be honest with you. The problem is not with firearms. The problem is with mental health. We have people who do not have good mental health who get access to firearms. But that, by the way, is something that's supposed to be caught in that background check. It is part of the human condition, unfortunately. Controlling the firearms is the first step towards losing our freedom. That's the reason our founding fathers put that as the Second Amendment in our Constitution. Thank you.
I think you're going to go first, Mr. Reagan, on this question. What are you going to do to help make abortion free and legal in Tennessee? Again, what are you going to do to help make abortion free and legal in Tennessee?
I'm going to do nothing to make it free. It is already legal in the sense that if the mother's health is at risk, the doctor nor the person getting the abortion suffers no criminal penalties. However, it turns out that 96%, rounded to 95.7 actually, of all the abortions according to the data that's been given to the CDC are for birth control. That is unacceptable because you have to answer a basic question. When does life begin? When is that a human being entitled to his own right to life? I would remind you that in our Declaration of Independence, the first right that was cited was the right to life. So, in my estimate, once that egg is fertilized and becomes a zygote, it has its own unique DNA, it has the potential to grow into a normal human being, and it has rights. Its mother has rights. Her right to life is not to be trumped, but neither is that individual. That individual in the womb has committed no crime and deserves nothing to be executed over. And that's what an abortion is. Thank you.
So I am a man, and it's hard for me sometimes to get my head around this. But I'm surrounded with a lot of females in my family. And I see a lot of females in the audience here. And as a politician, as an elected official, I really don't see that I should supersede your right to do with what you want to with your body. And what I mean by that is, if my daughter was going to give birth and it was going to jeopardize her right to life as well, who am I as a politician or a legislator to step in and intervene in that? A physician knows the science behind this, and the physician is the one who can make that decision along with the mom and her family and the mom and her daughter. I firmly believe that. Again, if you deny that opportunity, that right, if you will, to that female, it's going to happen anyway, in a back alley or something like that. And it will jeopardize the right to life of both the fetus as well as the woman. And we have to think about that as well. It's really important in certain circumstances, not all, but certain circumstances, to be able to do with you what you want to with your own body. Thank you.
Mr. Dodson, you go first with this question. Does my body, my choice, apply to vaccine? Are you against vaccine mandates? Does my body, my choice, apply to vaccines? Are you against vaccine mandates?
This is an interesting question. You know, we came through a pandemic recently. And how do you answer something like that? I see people in the audience wearing masks. You know, I see people who took those vaccines, and it actually more than likely saved their lives. So how far should I reach into something like that? I think it is a right of the individual to do that, but sometimes you have to weigh the rights of the individual against the rights of the community or the whole. We have a community in our room now. I would suggest that you need to consider not just yourself, not just your personal freedom, but also the freedom of everybody that you come in contact with in our community. And I think that's responsible. So I don't know if I answered it perfectly, but I answered it from the heart, and I answered it the way I think I would have approached this. And I can tell you, people in my family, we were both sides of this. Some of us decided, you know what, we're going to do this because I have a grandson. I don't want to expose him to something involuntary, and it could have been detrimental. So we decided to have the vaccination. We were a little older. We thought it was better to do that as well. So that's my answer for that one. Thank you.
I will agree with my colleague here that that is an interesting question. That said, we have laws on the book concerning public health. And those laws on the book concerning public health are to avoid spreading pandemics or plagues, if you will. And those conditions that are satisfied by that law are about vaccines. I would point out to you that the vaccine, as it was called most recently for COVID-19, was not a vaccine until CDC changed their definition. A vaccine was defined as made from the dead organisms that caused the disease. It was injected to build immunity. The vaccine that was in fact called a vaccine, but not really, was identified and still is by the Food and Drug Administration as an experimental treatment. Therefore, I would say that the individual is the one who should make the decision on the experimental decisions. That is to say, if you're given a vaccine that has been tested and proven, which usually takes about 15 years, and you're told it's safe, chances are it is. If, on the other hand, you're given a shot that has not been approved for 15 years, in fact, not even 2 years before it was dispensed, I question the value of it. And I would say that it's to the individual's decision as to whether or not to do that. Now, there should be consequences related to that in the sense that if they refuse it, they should be told that there are certain things that they may not be able to participate in. Thank you.
We have already touched a little bit on this topic about Medicaid, but a question that someone has written says, when Kentucky expanded Medicaid, thousands of people were able to get help for opioid addiction. Why can't Tennessee also offer health coverage for those in need? I'll read it again. When Kentucky expanded Medicaid, thousands of people were able to get help for opioid addiction. Why can't Tennessee also offer health coverage for those in need? And I think Mr. Reagan starts first.
The answer to that question is Tennessee does offer that, not to the same degree. However, I would point out to the audience that right now, for the first time in our state/national history, our national debt has eclipsed $31 trillion. That's with a T. Furthermore, the Congressional Budget Office projects that the interest payments on this will triple from nearly $400 billion in fiscal year 2022 to $1.2 trillion in 2032. Folks, we can't afford, as a nation, to go that far in debt. It's going to bankrupt us. We've got to draw the line somewhere. Opioid addiction is in fact a disease. The first time they take that drug, it's not. But after they've taken it long enough, it is a disease and it should be treated as a disease. But we have paths in place already for it. Whether they should be expanded, I would say we can certainly debate that. I would also point out that I was one of the co-sponsors in the legislature on something called the drug courts, and I call the drug recovery system in courts, for that very problem. There are paths open to people with opioid addiction to reach out and seek treatment. They're not denied because they can't afford it. It is a question of whether or not they want to go get it. So opioid addiction is a disease that does need to be treated, but the individual who has it has to want to get well out of it first. Thank you.
You know, I wish it was that easy. Wanting to get well from a disease or an addiction to the opioid crisis is one thing. Making that happen is another. You have to go through counseling. You have to be evaluated by a physician. There are a lot of things that you have to think about, you have to go through. If it was that easy, if you could just say, you know, I'm going to click it off and I'm not going to be addicted anymore, I would understand that. Now, with regards to refusing Medicaid in the state of Tennessee, I really keep coming back to this. You know, other states have done this. And I do understand you have to balance your budget. But what are your priorities? Last night, somebody asked me about how I make decisions in the city of Oak Ridge on city council. And I said, this is the way I do that. I have other people who I talk to the constituents. I do those things. And I will definitely do that when elected as your next state representative. But I think there are certain things, and you can quote me on this, everybody in the room, that are more important than money, and that's people's lives. And I want to pause on that because that is how I feel, and I know that's how most of you feel. When somebody's lives are at stake, if it's somebody in your family, you will do nothing short of making things like this happen. And I will vote for that.
This next question will be directed to both of y'all, but Mr. Dodson will answer first. We have asked, there's been 7 questions thus far that you, the audience, have written and have been picked out to ask these 2 candidates. We've done 7. I've got 2 more to go. And normally we just do 3 or 4, but since we didn't have anybody from the Congress or Senator McNally or anybody here to speak for them, we got a little extra time. So the next question, will you work to find common ground and solutions to common problems across the political spectrum? Will you work to find common ground and solutions to common problems across the political spectrum? Mr. Dodson, you go first.
I'm asked that every time I have a focus group. I want to educate you all just a little bit. I have met with several groups across the county, and I've had an opportunity to talk to them about the issues. And one of the questions that always comes up, from black, white, rich, poor, whoever, how are you going to get anything done as a Democrat when you're in the state legislature? And one of the things I've done in the history of media as an educator and working on city council and planning commission is we don't always agree on things, but we can find common ground. It's important enough to be able to come to a consensus, to think things through, and you can find common ground. It's more about not a Democrat or Republican issue. It's more about a people issue, and I feel like I've got a great experience or had a lot of training doing that as a school teacher. You think you can go into a classroom and it's either this way or this way? Not at all. So that has helped me and my colleagues on city council. It's been terrific working with them. And some of them feel differently than I do, and some of them feel the same. But we always are able to work around these things. You need to know that I am not so left-wing that I won't accept some things that we can agree on. And hopefully John will agree with me on this. There is always a center ground, and we can meet in the middle on a lot of issues.
Let me say in answer to that question that, yes, in fact, I have done that. I have carried bills with my Democrat colleagues in the General Assembly, and I've carried resolutions with them. I have no problem with doing what's best for the state of Tennessee. That is the first question I always ask. Is this good for Tennessee? We can get an agreement on, yes, this is good for Tennessee. The next thing we must agree on is, where are we starting from? If we get an agreement on that, then we must work to find the way to get from where we are to where we want to be. That's frequently where the disagreement comes. However, as we work through that, we find that occasionally, by taking a little of that idea and a little of this idea from whatever side it's offered, that we can make a solution work. That said, when it comes down to pushing and shoving, you have to have the wherewithal, the intestinal fortitude to hold your ground when you're in the right. I firmly believe that compromise is the art of politics, and politics is the art of compromise. However, there are some things. Human life, for example, doesn't need to be compromised, whether it's in the womb or somewhere else. No compromise is appropriate there. From that standpoint, I will not compromise my principles, the things that I have said that I'm going to run on before this group and publish as my positions. Thank you.
Reagan, you'll go first on this one. We hit on this earlier when I asked the question, do you support modular small reactors coming to Oak Ridge? There's another question that somebody has written, and this one is, do you support additional new nuclear-related businesses for Oak Ridge? Do you support additional new nuclear-related businesses for Oak Ridge?
Straightforwardly, the answer to that is yes. Oak Ridge began the atomic age, quite literally. In fact, sometimes it's called the Atomic City. More frequently sometimes now than the Secret City. But I definitely support nuclear industry coming to our city. In fact, I actively campaigned for it. One of the individuals at our groundbreaking this last week for ChrysoX commented on how many times he had met with me on that issue. Additionally, I have made trips out west to visit various companies out there to try to convince them to locate here in Oak Ridge for the nuclear industry. We have the workforce, we have people who understand what goes on, are not hostile to it, and furthermore, it's good for our state, it's good for our nation, it's good for the environment, it's good for the world. So yes, I certainly support it, and I think Oak Ridge is the ideal place. With the Oak Ridge National Lab, the spark plug of innovation, if you will, and the Y-12 complex with the workforce that we have out there who are very, very familiar with all that goes on there. We should reach out and seize that opportunity. I have been working on that for over 10 years, and I still think it's the best thing to do. Thank you.
We found an issue that we both agree on. I wholeheartedly support nuclear energy. My friends who are physicists, my friends who work at the lab, they have sold me on it. There's no reason that we should be afraid of this. The small modular reactors are a great asset to our community. Working away from coal-fired plants like the Bull Run steam plant, I think things like that are kind of going into the past. In fact, at the Bull Run steam plant, I'd love to do more of a solar farm there. I think that would help us immensely with renewable energy sources. But again, I think most of you all understand where we are from. Oak Ridge is the town that was conceived of science in 1942, 43, somewhere in there. If I missed that, I apologize for the exactness. But, you know, I'm very proud of where I live. It was a secret city at one time. We're trying to get the word out that it's a prosperous place to live, work, and play. But it's also one of those energy capitals of the world, and some of the new technologies that we're developing are part and parcel of that nuclear age. So again, I think small modular reactors and those that are associated with that are the way to go as far as clean energy and sustainable energy that will power our grid now and in the future.
They have asked, I have asked them 9 questions. This is number 10. I was looking in the program. It doesn't have any time limit for how many questions get asked. Since these other ones, but I'm going to make an executive decision here. This is the last question. This is number 10. But I will read exactly how it's worked and how it was penned for this event this evening. The United States ranks poorly among developed nations in health outcomes for its residents. And yesterday I heard a news report that Tennessee is one of the 10 lowest ranked states for this metric. That's terrible, the writer says. How should the state government respond to this terrible situation? Again, I'm going to read this question. The United States ranks poorly among developed nations in health outcomes for its residents. And yesterday I heard a news report that Tennessee is one of the 10 lowest ranked states for this metric. That's terrible. How should the state government respond to this terrible situation? And I think Mr. Reagan, no, you go first. Mr. Dodson.
I appreciate that. You give me that really long, hard question, and I get to go first. You know, it is too bad that a developed country as the United States is, that we should have statistical things like that as far as low health care. I think it's attributed to some of the lifestyles that we actually have in our communities. I don't think it's necessarily a result of the healthcare providers, but I think it's our cultural fascination with unhealthy lifestyles, meaning overeating, not enough exercise. You know, again, I draw this back to the classroom. I see this a lot, and we try our best to educate our young people to the importance of not just being a healthy mind, but also a healthy body. So I think that needs to be addressed in the education system to help us climb out of that statistical area, because again, I do feel that being able to control some of those things and being able to think through those things as far as how that affects you is really important. You will actually have a longer life. You will have a happier life if you live a healthier life. And I don't know if I answered that exactly correct, but that's kind of the way I feel about that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have found something else we may be in agreement on. That said, the reason that Tennessee ranks as low as it does, my colleague hit upon here, and that is lifestyle choices. We, as a society, are a free people. We make those choices. Sometimes those choices are not the best things for us. That has a cost. And that cost is, frankly, what those statistics were citing. Tennessee is unfortunately high in obesity and low in activity rates, especially for young people. I lived in Europe for 8 years and saw an entirely different cultural approach. As far as adopting that, that's not the function of government. Government can encourage, government can put out information, government can in fact specify that certain things be taught in schools. However, in the final analysis, we make those choices. We can try to influence our friends, our families to make good choices, eat healthy, exercise, and otherwise take care of our bodies. But in the final analysis, it's freedom. If we choose to make those bad decisions, we choose to suffer those consequences. I do not think that it's a laudable thing, don't misunderstand me. But I think it is something that we have to be aware of, that those people who make the choices have the right to make those choices. Thank you.
I heard on the news just before I left my house coming down here. Tennessee ranks number 43 in rankings of all the 50 states as the least unhealthy state in the nation. The least healthy. Yeah, the least healthy. We're the 43rd least healthy state in the nation. That's not something to be proud of. We need to spend a little more time, as these gentlemen said, exercising and looking after and trying to make our health better. But I will say this. Let's have a good hand for both of these candidates. We got closing statements. Thank you. We have a minute and a half for a closing statements from each one of you. And you went first for the opening statement. So, Mr. Dodson, you will go first with the closing statement.
Well, first and foremost, again, thank you to the League of Women Voters for everything you did tonight, and thank you for everybody who's in attendance. Democrat, Republican, Independent, everybody. You need to know that this is one of the best venues. It always has been to get the word out, and we really appreciate the Chamber of Commerce for supporting our meet and greet before this. So, again, you all, if I could give you a round of applause, I would. Thank you again, and I really do mean that. That's very, very important. Next, I wanted to go ahead and go through some things. First of all, I want to dwell on a few things. The reason you should vote for me as your next representative. My community service record in the city of Oak Ridge and Anderson County is quite extensive, and I will continue to do that whether elected or not. But I think I can help take your voice to Nashville with regard to that. My experience as a teacher, a council member, a planning commissioner, but more importantly, my experience working with all the nonprofit boards in our community and serving the citizens. I think that's important. I would like for you to do something for me. If you are supportive of our campaign, and I'm going to say our campaign because there's a lot of people who have been working with me. If you're supportive of our campaign, please go out and tell 10 of your friends that we would like their vote to support me when I am elected on November the 8th. And then finally, I would be honored, and I stress this, honored to serve as your representative. And I do appreciate what John has done for the last several years. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, to the League of Women Voters, the Chamber of Commerce for sponsoring this event. Let me say, this election is more than a selection decision between candidates. It is a critical choice about vision and direction for our state and our nation. My opponent's party has brought our nation high gasoline prices, national debt records, staggering crime statistics, crippling inflation. His party has not just allowed but encouraged the flow of illegal migrants and cartel members and deadly drugs. The NEA Union, which he proudly claims he belongs to, advocates not just for abortion, but for pornography in school libraries and encouraging children in transgenderism. This group wants children addressed with factually, grammatically incorrect names and pronouns. Make no mistake, my opponent presents an affable, pleasant demeanor, nice guy. But the values and positions he represents are not those of Tennessee. Rather, they are aligned with Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and others wanting to radically transform our nation and our state into something we should not allow to happen. I ask for your vote on November the 8th. Thank you.
Now let's have a hand for both. We're finished with you two. Y'all go sit down now. You're welcome. Thank y'all for taking all these 10 questions. Like I say, I didn't write them, I just read them. Is Monty Fritz or Jan Hahn here?
Yes, sir.
Well, come on down here, Monty Fritz. Is Jan Hahn? You're both here. We got more questions for you. But these two are running for state representative for the 32nd representative district. It's parts of Rome County, and is it all of Loudoun County?
No, sir, it's the northern half.
The northern half of Loudoun County and part of Rome County? Part of Rome County?
Most of Rome County.
Most of Rome County.
2 precincts in Rome County around Auburn Springs come out.
Okay, 2 precincts in Rome County come out. The other precincts are in this 32nd district, and also probably half of Loudoun County or so, a third of Loudoun County. Okay. But anyway, you're our neighbors to the south, and each one of you have 2 minutes for an opening statement. We'll just do this in alphabetical order. Monty Fritz, you go first.
I want to say thank you for having this tonight. It's always a great thing. I spent a career working here in Oak Ridge, and every time I come into the town, I'm reminded of the greatness that still lives in this place. What we were able to accomplish 7 decades ago, I think, is still very much in our DNA, and it's a great driver in how I think and how I act. I do still believe in that flag and that Constitution. I still do believe in what we have been blessed with here in this area, that we can do great things. Part of the reason I'm running for office and I'm asking for your vote is so that we can pass this greatness, this freedom, this liberty on to the next generation of Tennesseans, of Oak Ridgers, Kingstonians, folks from Lenore City and Rockwood and south of the river. I think that it's absolutely incumbent upon each of us. As Jefferson said in that Declaration of Independence, he said that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. And those rights are precious. They are endowed by our Creator. And it is our responsibility at this time to make sure that we secure those rights. And you have to elect the right persons to make sure that we accomplish that. I want to see us exercise our potential in this area, not just to meet our energy needs, and to use the expertise that we have at ORNL and Y12 and TVA. But I want to see us, our state, become the leading energy producer in the Southeast. I want to see us deliver those kilowatts all across the Southeast to the grid because, folks, we're trained, we know how to do that. So let's make sure that we pass that on. Let's pass that vision on. That's job security, it's energy security, and it's solid infrastructure to our children. Thank you.
Good evening. I am a fiscal conservative and social moderate. You don't take money from people who need it, and you don't spend money that you don't have. No government at any level, local, state, or federal, can tell me what I can do or not do in the privacy of my home. The legislature does not have the right to criminalize private actions of individuals in their home. I'm not an ideologue. I don't care if there's a D or an R or an I after your name. I'm a problem solver. It reflects my profession of 40 years as a family physician in small towns. You give me a good solution to a difficult problem, I'll run with it. And do we have problems? Crumbling infrastructure, struggling educational system, and a dysfunctional healthcare system. And if we do not resolve to solve them together, we will never solve them at all. In the words of my stepmother, the late Senator Annabelle Clement O'Brien, laws should be written that bring people together, not divide them. Laws should be written that do not enrich the few and impoverish the many, but raise the living standard of all. Laws should be written that reflect the highest ideals of a community, not its basest prejudices. Tonight you will hear two men argue passionately about very, very different conceptions of the role of government in people's lives. We hope that we're able to convey accurately our impressions on all the topics that you ask us so that you can make a thoughtful decision over the next few weeks. We joke, he calls me, I will tell that later then.
Okay, we're going to start out in alphabetical order. So, our first question, Mr. Fritz, how do you suggest we help our state come together and overcome our divisiveness?
So I think the first thing that we have to do is make sure that we adhere to our Constitution. I think that we already have a process in place in the state and in this nation to ensure that what is sometimes perceived as a toxic divisiveness does not get out of control. I would offer that dissenting opinions and disagreement within your elected officials, your bodies of elected officials, is extremely important. It's a vetting process. Our founders were brilliant men. And this process that we have in place drives us to better decisions by having what some often consider to be divisiveness, which sometimes is merely a dissent. And that's important. And it's important that we maintain it. It does trouble me that there are those today that want to silence the voices of dissent. We face a time in our country when we have men and women who their voices are silenced simply because they express something counter to what may be the popular culture opinion. We should disdain that, folks. We should encourage dissenting opinions. And we should be able to argue and still not hate one another. And I think the basis of that is to follow that Tennessee Constitution, to follow that U.S. Constitution, and abide by what Article 6 instructs us to in that U.S. Constitution. Thank you.
So the question is, how do you talk to people who disagree with you? Well, we face common problems. And I've said that if we're not willing to solve them together, we'll never solve them at all. We can disagree with each other without being disagreeable. Let me tell you a story rather quickly about a patient I had. She was an absolutely miserable person to work with, angry, and the nurses often asked me to get rid of her. I refused to. Got cancer, and eventually cancer won. And he came to me to talk about a hospice program. And he said to me, I've been really a horse's ass these last couple of years. And I've hurt a lot of people by what I've said to them. I go, I'm not going to argue with that. And then he says to me, you think I'm going to go to hell? I thought a little bit. And I said, I don't think God wants to punish Satan any more than he already has. And he looked at me and he began to laugh and laugh and laugh until tears came down his eyes. He put his hand on my hand and said, thanks, Doc, I needed that. Several weeks later, I learned that he died peacefully at home. I cried. We need to remember that we are all children of God. And therefore, by definition, we are brothers and sisters. And when we remember that, before we start our discussions, we will figure out a solution to our common problems.
That question I chose to ask you two, and that's the only question that you haven't heard yet, because these are all new questions that were not asked of the two candidates for the 32nd House District. 33rd. Excuse me, 33rd. Y'all are 30. Y'all are 32nd. Now I'm back. But anyway, this question, Tennessee has offered hundreds of thousands of federal dollars to expand Medicaid. Will you support expanding TennCare to cover the low-income citizens in your district who cannot get health insurance? Again, Tennessee has offered hundreds of thousands of federal dollars to expand Medicaid. Will you support expanding TennCare to cover the low-income citizens in your district who cannot get health insurance? And we'll start with Mr. Hahn.
The answer is yes. Now why? For 40 years I have been taking care of people, many of whom do not have health insurance. I see what the consequences of not having health insurance are. It's devastating to them and their families. Here is an opportunity for our state to bring
into our borders that will allow us to expand access to health care. We're going to talk about, undoubtedly, bringing jobs to our communities. If you don't have a healthy workforce, you're wasting your time trying to attract good-paying jobs. If you don't have an educated workforce, you're wasting your time. So you must start with social capital. You must start with human capital, a healthy and educated workforce before you can do anything else that you.
Answer is yes.
So my answer will be no, and I'll tell you why. Currently, we have a needs-based system with TennCare in the state. We have 1.6, according to September data, we have 1.6 million people on TennCare in the state of Tennessee, 900,000 children. And rather than ascribe to an overbearing federal system that would force the addition of numbers rather than need, we should stay on a needs-based application of those systems. And I would offer to you that many of you are the reason why we should do that. We cannot perpetuate spending at the federal rate that we have at this point, or we're going to jeopardize all those programs that our seniors have earned. We have seniors that depend on our ability as a government to fund their retirement, what they paid in Social Security and is theirs, as well as the health care. And if we start to expand into these federal systems recklessly, we will break those current systems that we must have. And so it's very much for a preservation of what we have now that I would offer that we must grow our health insurance base by employment and industry in the state of Tennessee. And again, let's become the nation's #1 energy producer, and let us Tennesseans decide how to be that.
You just keep standing, Mr. Fritz, because you're going to answer this one first. What is your opinion for voter ID to cast a vote?
To cast a vote, photograph ID, citizen only. That vote is a precious thing. It is one of the foundations of our constitutional republic. And we must ensure the integrity of that vote by making sure that those who are casting the vote are citizens, they are in the correct precinct, and they have a photo identification. I think that's absolutely crucial. I think to do otherwise is going to diminish the value, that priceless value of each of the votes that you all hold as Americans, as Tennesseans. And I think like all other government processes, you see in business, we often think this way, and sometimes in government, we forget to think this way. But there needs to be a continuous improvement. We should never be satisfied with simply the status quo. We should always be looking for improvements. And when I say improvements, I'm referring to the use of both technologies and new ideas to make sure that we protect the sovereignty of your vote, because it is absolutely important. Not just to you, but to your children and to your grandchildren, to make sure that we propagate this freedom to the next generation.
Well, here again, we agree. We both agree that the person who votes needs to be the person who says they vote.
Hold your mic a little closer, please.
Sure, John. We agree that the person who votes is the person who says they are voting. So the devil is always in the details. And this is where the state has to decide what are the requirements that a person has to fulfill in order to access a voting card. So Monty referred to photo ID, so now the issue then becomes, what are the types of photographs that will constitute sufficient evidence? We can get into the weeds tonight, but the point I want to make is that we both agree that integrity of the voting booth is the bedrock of our system of government. And now we just have to decide the details that will enable us to confidently determine that the person who walks in is who they say they are.
Mr. Hahn, you'll go first on this question. Please state your position regarding gun safety and legislation.
Sure. I don't have any problem with guns, so I own none, but my daughter Alaska is an avid hunter. I've had this conversation with many gun owners, and I start by saying, let me tell you what my opinion is, and then let me run it by you, and you can tell me your response to it. And I say, all that I expect from a gun owner, 3 things. They know how to use it safely, they store it securely, and they keep it out of the hands of people who don't need it or would use it inappropriately. Every single gun owner goes, that's really reasonable. So I said we're on the same page now. Let me share with you a mathematical equation. D squared equals I times M. D squared, death and destruction. That's all the catastrophes that guns cause in our society. I, intent. That's what's up in the mind of the person who has the gun in their hand. M is the means by which the gun is procured, as well as the speed with which it's procured and the type of weaponry. If you're going to solve this gun problem, you have to be willing to sit down at the table and look at I, mental health, John referred to that, times M, the means by which people get their guns. If you choose to do one or the other, but not both, you'll get nowhere.
So this is one of the areas that Jan and I disagree on pretty strongly. He takes the Joe Biden approach of our rights aren't absolute. I would offer to you that that Second Amendment is absolute because it uses the word shall. So I'm an absolute believer that you have a right to keep and bear firearms. I do think there's a personal responsibility to stay trained up. I do find it problematic that in much of the media today, you will hear guns issued as the problem. We say we have a gun violence problem. We have a gun issue. And those are by and in and of themselves inanimate objects that some evil person perpetuates a crime. I would offer that that gun no more commits a crime than that scalpel commits an abortion. Someone had to have that instrument in their hand and perform that hideous deed. So mental illness is certainly an issue. It's certainly an issue that we need to address, I think, in the state of Tennessee and how we care for the mentally ill. But we cannot allow that to infringe upon those God-given rights and constitutionally documented rights that we as Americans in Tennessee have.
Just keep standing, Mr. Fritz.
You go first on this question. You have a plan for housing illegal immigrants.
Yes, sir, and it's called Mexico. We should not have the issue that we have with illegal immigrants in this nation today. The failed policies of this current White House have allowed an invasion at our southern border. We bear the cost every day in dollars, and it's counting, in what it's costing each of you, each of us, in tax dollars, as Tennesseans and as Americans, for this unnecessary crisis, this insurgency that we have at our southern border. And we Tennesseans can do some things to shift that flow of illegal aliens into this state. And some of the horrible things that come along with that open border. I bet if I were to ask for a show of hands, most of us in this room have been somehow affected by this horrible fentanyl that floods across that border. And again, securing our right to life, and our right to sovereignty as a nation is absolutely necessary for us to curb this immigration crisis that we have at our southern border. Follow the laws. We're all products of immigration. I certainly am. But it has to be legal. We'll welcome the legal, but never the illegal.
Let's be honest, when we assigned blame, this problem did not start in 2020 when a new administration appeared. For the last 60 years, every administration has kicked the bucket down the street. So let's be honest. America is a land of immigrants. The strength, the power, the beauty of this country comes from the fact that in every generation, people from around the world have come to our shores seeking a better home, and in the process of doing so, brought new ideas and an increased sense of vigor to our nation. In the harbor of New York City, there stands a statue of a woman with her torch raised high above her head. And on the base of that statue are these words: "Give me your fork. You're tired. You're huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send your homeless tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. America must live up to the ideals that it so proudly proclaims to possess."
You just stay up here. Just stay standing, because you're going to get to answer this one first. What would you do to improve our public schools? What would you do to improve our public schools?
So, I'm a physician, but for 3 years, I decided to pursue another dream. My wife called it a nightmare. I decided to teach English in a public high school. And I didn't teach English, I taught health sciences, and I loved it for 3 years, 2013 to 16. So I speak with a little bit of experience. You get what you pay for, and you all know that. The amount of money that teachers make is absolutely unacceptable. First salary, 2013, starting salary for me, without a master's in education, I got a teaching certificate. I'm the lowest of the low. That was $34,000. Now, thankfully, I didn't need to raise a family on that money. But if I was a young man and had a wife, and had a child, I would not have been able to raise them in the way I wanted to. We must increase the compensation that we pay our teachers, because we're not going to get the best, the brightest. We're not even going to get people wanting to be in this profession. And until we solve that issue, nothing else is going to happen.
So I take a little bit different direction. Denise and I, my wife, sitting in the back row there, we have one of our sons is an educator, and I do have a heart for the fact that that entry-level pay would be tough to live on today. Unfortunately, what we've allowed to happen to inflation in this country in the last few years has impoverished many folks who were already having a hard time. I think a greater inclusion of the parental rights at a local level is helpful in our education. I'm a competition person. I think that competition makes business stronger. I think it makes football teams stronger. I think one of the reasons that Oak Ridge High School plays an aggressive schedule is because they've learned over the years that to get to excellence, they have to play the better teams. And so I think a competitive structure in our school systems is absolutely important. I think to deny that is to deny the principle that competition is healthy. I think that we should be making our decisions in education at the local level almost completely. I think at the state level, we should be preventing some of those pornographic and inappropriate and un-American materials that some of the textbook providers and scholastic companies provide. We should do that. And we should further empower the local educators to invest in those children. Thank you.
You just keep standing because you go after this one first. Explain your ideas about incentivizing economic development through tax breaks, etc. Explain your ideas about incentivizing economic development through tax breaks, etc.
So I think that's one of the tools in the toolboxes that we in communities and states have. We're in a very competitive, you hear it said today, it's almost cliche that we're competing with the world. I'm not sure that's always the case, but we are competing definitely within this region for industry and for jobs. And having a solid infrastructure to support those industries that we recruit is tremendously important. Any infrastructure has to be reliable, it has to be affordable, and it has to be responsive. If you don't have that, you don't have an infrastructure, a sense of infrastructure to support industry coming in. We have 20,000 megawatts of power generation capacity in the state of Tennessee today. That is something that we're going to have to address. We talked about small modular reactors and other ways to produce electricity earlier. But we're going to have a more responsive capacity to generate electricity. It's absolutely necessary. Back to what seems like the question. We should not be propagating corporate welfare at any level. Most of the folks that know me know that I'm absolutely opposed to what we did for the Titans this past year. Incentivizing business is one thing, but corporate welfare is another. So we have to learn how to have the infrastructure ready and the tax base reasonable, affordable, so that we can recruit those small businesses and large.
So today I say goodbye to my student. I teach at South College. I'm an adjunct instructor for the family medicine rotation. I was trying to give him some parting words. I will get to the answer to your question. And I said to the student, you take a person from where they are. When they come to you with a problem, you ask yourself, where are they? And then you devise a solution. So in a like manner, when a small town or a big city try to bring business to them, you have to ask the leaders of that community, where are you? I was in Rockwood yesterday. This is a little town that is struggling to recreate itself. Really struggling. It was painful to listen to many of the questions, but it was also inspiring because the men and women there were trying very hard to figure out a solution. And that is my approach. I come to each community and say, out of this toolbox that has been applied, which tools you find most useful for your particular community? Then I run with it.
You just keep standing. But for our last question to these two gentlemen, what are your thoughts on the recent legislation requiring schools to scan every book that is in the school, including teachers' personal books that they have in their classroom? What are your thoughts? I'm going to read that question again. What are your thoughts on the recent legislation requiring schools to scan every book that is in the school, including teachers' personal books that they have in their classrooms?
So I was saying to my student today, my second word's wisdom, which is you're an educator, and it's your responsibility, if the person's going to make a wise decision about their health care, to give them all of the relevant facts. Not impose your opinion or your solution or your morals. You just share with them the relevant facts, and they'll make a decision that isn't the best of their needs. So in answer to this question, I believe that the more information people have, the better they are. They should have access to all the literature of the world. Some of it may be a little uncomfortable to read at times. But to censor books is the last thing that we want to do. And my concern about this legislation is it may have a chilling effect on the ability of people to bring literature to school. If you don't want to read it, you don't have to read it. But you shouldn't deny someone else's right to read that literature.
So I completely support the parents' right to have an expectation that their children are not exposed to pornography in their schools. And I absolutely support the parents' expectation, along with the obligation that we have to that child, to teach them the basic fundamentals. At some point in time in that child's life, they will become old enough to go explore whatever these books are that may introduce these new ideas, which, again, most of us, I think, would find reprehensible. Exposing a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old child, and this has happened in the United States and even in the middle schools here in East Tennessee, to pornographic type material is absolutely unacceptable. If we did this as individuals or as families, we would be incarcerated. There should be no exception for that. So here's how I think we should help the teachers. We found ourselves in this bad spot, so I think we should hold greatly accountable those producers of curriculum that supply our state. If they send it in, there's a cost for them to pay, civilly and criminally. Because it is important for us to protect those children, to educate those children, and to provide them a strong foundation to be successful in the world. Thank you.
Now for our closing statements, you have 1.5 minutes. And Mr. Fritz, you went first with the opening statement, so I'm going to let Mr. Hahn go first with his closing statement.
1.5 minutes.
Then I must speak very fast. So I'm going to start by telling you a joke that I was going to start. Monty and I like to tweak each other's nose, and I say he's the nicest religious ideologue I've ever met, and he says I'm the nicest Marxist you'll ever encounter. So on my business card, I have 3 phrases: united in purpose, respectful of differences, and committed to success. Let me share with you what that means. United in purpose. We have to agree on what our problems are. And I think there is pretty much agreement among us all that it's crumbling infrastructure, struggling educational system, and a dysfunctional healthcare system. We're there. Committed, respectful of differences. And I think you saw a wonderful example tonight with the man who preceded us, with Monty and I. We have very sharp differences. We don't disagree that we want to climb the mountain. We're disagreeing on how we're going to get up there. And that's okay. But we have to be committed to success, which is we have to look each other in the eye and say, okay, but we're going to have to figure out a way to the top eventually. And when we do that, we won't compromise our principles, we'll compromise on how we get up to the summit. That's hard work, really hard work, but it's the only way that succeeds. And that's the type of person that I will bring to the legislature. Thank you again for your time.
So many rich things about running for office. This is the first time I've ever ran for office. It has been a rich experience, and I appreciate it. I'm so grateful for it that a country boy like me could grow up, get an education, have a great career, and hopefully apply some of that service to you. One of the things I am thankful for is I think Jan Hahn, and I think you'll agree with this, he and I probably developed a friendship that's going to go on. And I am grateful for that. And we do we're 180 degrees off on those things. But I think that's tremendously important that we have that friendship. I will say, and Jan knows this, that the policies that he wants to follow, that he wants to apply, have proven themselves unsuccessful in our own area. They've resulted in an inflation crisis that is crippling the elderly and the working class. Those policies coming from this Biden administration result in an overregulation of energy production. And where we were once energy independent, we're now begging the Saudis to send us oil. That's not my vision for this Tennessee. My vision is that we apply that subject matter expertise that we have here, that skill, that ingenuity that we've had for 70 plus years in this area, and let's lead the way in energy production. Let's provide jobs and great education. Let's make our infrastructure secure, not only the electrical grid, and the power generation, but also our law enforcement and our fire protection. We owe it to our children to do this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Fritz and Mr. Hahn. Mr. Hahn, is this your first time to run for political office?
Yeah, I ran against the county position a couple of years ago.
But for state office, this is the first time. These two gentlemen, I mean, it's refreshing that they are so philosophically different, but yet they seem to like each other. It's refreshing, you too. I think we have a choice of some good candidates to vote for this election. And just want to let you know, early voting starts tomorrow. You go to the Wildcat Theater here in Oak Ridge. In Clinton, you go to the Anderson County Fairgrounds and vote there. And in Norris, the upper end of the county, you can go up to 441, intersection of 441 at the Anderson County office up there, county office on the north end. You can go up there and vote. We have 3 locations starting tomorrow for early vote. 9 to 6. Just gotta remember. Now, I don't know about Roane County. As an election commission member of Anderson County, I know the 3 locations in Anderson County, but in Roane County, I don't know where their locations are. Could you, yes?
The Christian Church out West Oak Ridge.
At Gum Hollow Road, First Christian Church.
Right.
Okay.
They just changed their name.
Milestone.
Milestone Christian Church. At Kingston Community Center, Rockwood Community Center, and Harriman Community Center.
Okay, so in Roane County you have 4 early voting locations.
Yes.
Now Anderson County has 3, but the Rockwood Community Center, Harriman Community Center, Kingston Community Center, and the First Christian Church at Gum Hollow Road going out down at the golf course here in the west end of Oak Ridge.
Yes, sir.
So there's no reason why any of you should not vote. You've got an opportunity to vote. Go early starting tomorrow, or if you want to wait until election day. But anyway, I just want to say thank you all for being here and getting informed of these candidates. I have enjoyed it. And oh yeah, the Thursday forum. There's another forum this Thursday, and it has to do with, let me get my cheat sheet here. It's the local city election. And those will be Oak Ridge City Council. There's 5 candidates there. Oak Ridge Board of Education. There's 3 candidates there. You get to vote for 3. And then, yeah, that's it. The Oak Ridge City Council and the Oak Ridge Board of Education will be Thursday night here, same time, 7 o'clock. And you won't have as many questions to answer because we've got more candidates. But anyway, thank all of you for being here. We're going to have, yes. Yeah.
A lot of people would think that their questions didn't get answered. Couldn't put them all in there, but the ones that were...
Here's what, you tell them where you think and hear you.
Hold it up close. Okay, those of you that wrote one particular to a certain person, we did not include those. It had to be in general. It had to be general questions, not specific to one candidate. So those we did not even pass on to the maestro.
And we had more questions than actually we had time, but thank all of you who penned the questions, took the time and forethought to come up with a question. But anyway, again, we got good candidates for this part of the state, and choose wisely. And yet we're going to have a little... Dan, I'm going to turn this back over to you with closing remarks.
Thank you. And let me add my thanks to the candidates for coming, to all of you, the audience that came and participated. Thanks to Harriet for keeping the speakers on schedule. I was sitting where I could see her hold up the cards, and the candidates all were very respectful. I didn't have to go find my hook even once. And thanks to Carolyn and to Willow for collecting the cards, and to Du Bois moderator who always makes this less dry and somewhat more humorous than it could be if he worked so good. So thank you all, and for those of you who are glutton for punishment, you can come back in 2 days and we'll go through all this again for city council and for the city school board. Thank you all.